Shwmai a chroeso I Sgyrsiau gyfer Yfory. Hello and welcome along to Talks for Tomorrow. My name is Steffan Powell and I'm thrilled to be hosting this podcast series, which is hopefully here to help get the conversation going, to start your brains ticking over and thinking about things ahead of Wales Climate Week and the virtual conference that we're hosting as part of that. The plan is for this series to help focus on creating practical and meaningful ways that we can reduce carbon emissions here in Wales over the next 5-10 years and, of course, into the future as well. And we're going to do that by focusing each one of these episodes on one of the major themes of Wales Climate Week. We're going to set out the scene, set out the current landscape, the context of where we are now. And then the plan is to spark ideas and talking points for you lovely people watching and listening to go away and work on and think about during the conference itself. We've got some brilliant people to come and chat with you for this podcast. So thank you very much for your company. And today we're joined by Sara Elias, Policy Advisor at the Innovation Foundation Nesta Cymru. Now, Sara, you spend your days, correct me if I'm wrong here, right? You spend your days supporting the work that Nesta does to try and deliver its 3 primary missions in Wales. We're talking a fairer start, which is about reducing the attainment gap for disadvantaged children, a healthy life, which is all about obesity, and then what we're going to focus on today, of course, a sustainable future, which is all about decarbonising homes. Ti'n brysur felly, Sara. You're a busy person.
I do. Yeah, I've been really lucky. So I'm really lucky. So I work with the teams that work across those 3 missions and across the nations in the UK. And we look at different ways of working with industry, working with communities and working with policymakers about what we need to do to really have impact in those areas.
Sara, ti hefyd yn dod o Sir Gyfyrddin. Mae'r gorau, West is best.
West is best, definitely.
Just setting that out from the beginning. Well, Sara, croeso, welcome to Talks for Tomorrow. Croeso I Sgyrsiau gyfer Yfory. So we're starting these podcasts, I suppose, with a bit of scene setting, Sara, so that everybody's kind of on the same page before we get into the challenges and the opportunities that are ahead. Where are we in Wales when it comes to housing and decarbonisation? Why is it such a big deal?
Yeah, so home decarbonisation is a big challenge in Wales. I don't think anyone can really deny it. The housing strategy for Wales set out by 2035 that we need to decarbonise 560,000 homes.
Yeah.
So that's over a 10-year period. So thinking around 60,000 homes per year. But if we look back in 2023, the number of installation in Wales was 5,800.
Yeah.
So
I'm not a mathematician, but that's a big jump needed there.
Yeah, it's a really big jump. So the kind of pace of change that we need to see is what the key element is, because actually the Welsh Government have set out what we want to do. They've chosen the technology. We think it's heat pumps. We know it's a tested technology. They use it widely in the EU. They use it in colder countries than the UK. So we know what needs to be done. It's just that implementation challenge. How do we do it quickly and how do we do it at pace?
Yeah. So let's jump into what needs to be done. And when it comes to the decarbonising of our homes, talking there a little bit about heat pumps, when we're looking at the logistics of decarbonising homes, is that the main thing, heat pumps, or is it about other issues? Well, I was thinking insulation maybe, or what are the things we need to be doing?
Yeah, so it's a relatively complicated picture. So we know in terms of technology that heat pumps is the most efficient technology. It's more efficient than boilers. And it's also using electrification, so we can use renewable energy then. So when we are heating our homes, we're doing it on a renewable basis. The other side of that then is thinking about Wales itself. So we've got 14% of people living in Wales living in fuel poverty, and where our housing stock is ranked amongst some of the lowest in terms of energy efficiency in Europe. So we need to be thinking, although we know the technology, we can't ignore these quite big issues that surround our housing stock. So whilst we need to be going at pace about home decarbonisation and home heating, we can't completely detangle that from fuel poverty and thinking about insulation and bringing the kind of poorest with us along on that journey. So taking a dual track approach to fuel poverty and decarbonisation.
I suppose a lot of that comes in the cell, right, of what the benefits would be to people to do it beyond just decarbonising itself. Is that sort of how are we looking in that terms? Because if you've got to suddenly get 55,000 more homes a year to be making these changes, that's 55,000 families or people that need to be on board, right?
Yeah, so I think there's different ways of doing it. I think there are kind of schemes that the Welsh Government run that we can tailor a little bit. There will be some homes that need kind of deep retrofitting, and those really high cost cavity wall insulations, those costly deep retrofits that need to be done for some homes to make them more efficient and to support those people with their housing bills. But those are kind of a minority, and we need to be thinking about kind of how do we split those schemes so that there's a wider scheme that focuses on just making homes heat pump ready. So the less intensive kind of retrofitting options, so not deep fabric retrofits, but good enough to get a heat pump ready household so that when they choose to move to heat pumps that they can do and they don't need to retrofit so easily. But I think there is something there about that kind of individual willingness to want to change over to heat pumps. And Nesta does a lot of work to think about kind of actually who knows what and who thinks what. So we've done a piece of work recently across the UK where we've done some segmentation analysis. So we've been looking at households and trying to understand what their attitudes are, what their knowledge base is, and kind of then how do we tailor that communication and the trust to those different groups? Because your retiree in a rural setting who's quite interested and wants to know more will have very different pressures on them than a household in a city with a new family.
Yeah.
So how do we kind of communicate to both their needs?
I've just bought a house, and you've made me think I need to go and check the cavity insulation in my new place. Actually, I'm going to write that down. That's the first thing I'm going to do after we finish this. Okay, so we've got a good sense now of it sounds like a big challenge here in Wales, right? And it's clearly, a big contributor to our carbon emissions. So it needs to be done. If we dive into then what is being done, what can be done, or what we should be aiming to do to try and solve some of these problems. What do you think, or the work that your organisation is doing in terms of trying to upscale this transition? What is the biggest challenge for that to happen? Is it winning people over? Is it cash? Is it both? Is it something completely different?
There's a few different areas. So one of the biggest barriers, and this is a little bit difficult for us in Wales because it doesn't sit within the powers of the Welsh Government, but kind of the price of electricity is a huge barrier. So at the moment, if you do swap from a boiler to a heat pump, depending on your boiler and the kind of your house, but essentially we're looking at essentially a cost neutral kind of, or slightly more expensive perhaps in some houses, whilst actually electricity is 4 times 1 more expensive per unit than gas at the moment. But if you swapped that and took the levies that are placed on electricities off, then it becomes a radically different kind of conversation because you are changing and saving on your bills and kind of helping towards home decarbonisation.
Yeah.
And those are changes that are taking place. It's kind of slowly, but UK government are making those changes. So although it's not within the grasp of the Welsh Government, we need to make sure that the changes we make to all properties enable everyone to benefit from that change once it does come in, because it will be a huge impact on people's bills.
So it's being ready for when because you're predicting and you're seeing that there will be a change in terms of the cost of electricity coming. We need to be ready for when that change comes, essentially is what you're saying.
Yeah, so we don't want to leave people behind. We don't want to think, actually, it's too difficult to retrofit some homes, or we're not going to make them heat pump ready because kind of the benefits of that aren't seen today, whilst we need to make those changes now so that when changes do come in place, they can benefit from those changes and we don't have to think kind of, we wish we'd done that differently.
Yeah. So big sort of taxation policy and things like that sit on the top level of government on a UK level or a Westminster level. In terms of Wales, what needs to be done? What can we do with the powers that we have and the abilities we have here in Wales to make changes? What would you like to see?
Yeah, so again, there's a few different things that can be done in Wales. So we've spoken about a little bit about the kind of individual as the kind of driver for change, but we can also think about what we can do as collective drivers. So can we take place-based approaches to it? So that could be things like collective purchase schemes where there's an efficiency to the kind of the cost, then bringing costs down, or it could be things like shared infrastructure. So there could be heating loops that then people plug into. So rather than each individual household having to make that decision, it's a collective community element. And that's where Nesta thinks there's really a kind of opportunity to test and be innovative, because there is no single solution to this. It's about working out what works, working out what the assumptions we're making are, and kind of testing them quite quickly, and then being able to roll out kind of the things that do work.
Do you think that people in Wales who might need to retrofit their homes, or who might need to move on to heat pumps or insulate differently or what have you, do you think there's enough of an awareness that this is a conversation that is being had at government levels and that you're doing all this work? Are they even aware that this is something that is coming down the track, do you think?
Awareness is different depending on kind of who you speak to. It's growing, which is good to see. And there's evidence that the demand in Wales actually is higher than in some of the other UK nations. Mm-hmm. So the boiler upgrade scheme, 12% of the demand from that is 12% higher in Wales than it is in England. So there's definitely awareness. But there are lots of barriers. And one of the things that Nesta has done to support that is create a visitor heat pump website. So on that, you can look for local houses that do have heat pumps, so that you can go and see them in reality, hear them, because that's some of the concerns, and speak to people who kind of live with a different heating system. So that kind of normalizes heat pumps rather than seeing it as quite an other technology that people aren't really aware of or don't know how it works.
What is the financial implication of having this work done, whether it's installing a heat pump or retrofitting your home? Obviously, we know at the moment times are tough, right? A lot of things you're talking about, the retrofitting, the introduction of heat pumps. Even if you go and visit a heat pump and it sounds and looks great, you might think, can't necessarily afford to do that at the moment. So what support is there out there to help encourage people to switch, or ultimately does the burden sit on the homeowner?
So it does sit with the homeowner. At the moment, there are schemes available. So you've got the boiler upgrade scheme, which is a UK scheme, which then provides homeowners with around 7,500 usually towards a new heat pump if they're replacing their boiler. But I think kind of those grants is good to really kickstart a movement. But in terms of sustainability, kind of we need something a bit more long term and sustainable for governments, because we can't kind of just pay for the whole thing. So what we do have, and Nesta has been working with the Development Bank in Wales about testing low interest loans. So can the government actually put money into it, but recoup that money as well? And what does that look like? And kind of we tested it in Wales. There's a lot of demand, but also to have that support around like, what does that actually look like? Because it's a new heating system. So providing both financial and informative kind of support to homeowners.
Yeah, that's it. So it's a way of people being able to borrow the cash to do it, but also government then ultimately not having to pay for it. And so that's quite a different way of thinking about it. I've just a thought, given that there are all these houses in Wales, what do you mean, 60,000 a year, right? It's what we need to be getting, and we're doing only 6-ish thousand at the moment. So quite a lot of work to be done. Sounds to me like an opportunity for someone for a job, right? If someone could come in and say, oh, look, this is my amazing business and I can help us get to, I don't know, however many number of homes retrofitted. Is there potentially work for people here at the moment, in terms of the workforce and getting people in jobs and stuff? Is there an opportunity there?
Yeah, definitely. It's a kind of a really strong foundational economy job, and one that is well suited kind of for Wales and kind of the geography of Wales. So there are things around training existing kind of boiler suppliers and installers to be able to install heat pumps rather than boilers. And there's some work going on around apprenticeships and how to train new people. But I think what we've seen at Nesta is that we need to kind of go beyond this simply training them in a new installation process. So what we see is that with a boiler, you install a boiler and your job is done. Mm-hmm. With a heat pump, you need to design a system. So it's a different type of skill and it's a different type of job, and you may be working as a team rather than an individual. So what we'd really love to see kind of in Wales is that kind of support around the person, not just in the training, but then developing the broader skills, the business skills to go around it.
Yeah. This sounds like quite long-term stuff, doesn't it, Sarah? It doesn't sound like anything that's going to be able to sort of... Everyone's always looking for a silver bullet, aren't they? But you know what I mean? It sounds like this is a long-term project. This isn't going to happen overnight, these changes. Because just thinking about upskilling a workforce, teaching them not just to do the job, but then to be businessmen, you know, and women as well. Like, as a big societal tax changes at the top, you know, trying to find new ways of financing things like this. It's all quite big stuff, isn't it?
It is, but I think kind of there is an element of pace. There's things that we can be doing faster. So, for example, one of the challenges at the moment is just some red tape around planning. So at the moment, especially for if you're living in urban areas, there's the 3-metre planning rule, which has been abandoned in England, doesn't exist in Scotland. So Wales is really an outlier. And it's taking months to abolish that rule.
Yeah.
And actually, the impact of that is that if you're a homeowner, it gives you additional costs and additional time to installing a heat pump. And it's something that if we really wanted to, we could kind of prioritise and remove. But it is taking a long time. So they are big changes. But I think there is, if there's a will, there's a way. Kind of really prioritising, putting pressure on the UK government to represent Welsh needs. There are things that can be done to really think about how do we do this at pace to ensure that we do have those kind of long-term gains, because there is a huge opportunity.
So is that legislation in Wales ongoing at the moment? Is that, or is it just are they having conversations? Where are we at with that?
So it's under consultation at the moment.
Yeah.
The consultation has closed. So we really do hope there'll be changes over the next 6 months. But yeah, we hope.
Reflecting there then on some of the opportunities that you think there could be for people sort of economically and in terms of jobs. Big picture sounds exciting, but practically on a sort of local level, are we seeing any of this stuff actually happening, or is it still quite theoretical at the moment?
Yeah, we are seeing more people train. There's definitely more courses available, and installers are going on that training. What Nesta's found is that once someone has done the training, they need a little bit more hand-holding in that process. So we have been developing a scheme, and we piloted it up in Scotland, where someone goes on the training and then they are provided with a heat pump. So they install the heat pump in their own home. So they get a bit of hands-on experience of actually doing an installation before having to do it for a client.
Yeah, and on their house. So if anyone's wrong, they're the ones dealing with it.
Yeah, so they're building up their confidence in simply doing the installation, but then they're also having experience of living with it, because it is a different heating system. We don't turn it on and off. It's a constant heating system. So it builds up their ability to then speak to customers and advise customers, not simply turn up and change a boiler like you do when there's an issue with your boiler. You ring someone, they come out and change it, and you say goodbye. Kind of, there's a lot more hand-holding with installing heat pump systems. And that has worked really well in the pilot, and we are now launching it across the UK. So it's called Start at Home. And it's really nice. We've got a company from Ammanford called Cymru'n, and they have just signed up. So they will be doing that in Wales as well.
Just there's so many elements, isn't it, of this? Does it need sort of coherent strategy or message for people? Because there's so many different ways. Oh, you might be able to get money off here, or you could do this to insulate your home. There's no one. Some bits are down to the Welsh government, of course, and then there's big issues in terms of taxation with the Westminster government. It's quite bitty in terms of like a theme, right? Whereas, you know, with, I don't know, other sectors, there's a bit of a cleaner message to get to people. Is that a problem, do you think, when it comes to housing changes?
Yes, but I don't think it's an unsurmountable problem. I think it's around making sure that kind of our departments don't work in silos, that the economic plan and the kind of the housing strategy speak to each other when it comes to those skills that we need. And we kind of are seeing that in the form of the kind of the skills route mapping. And there's kind of the emphasis on intergovernmental relationships, which we do need, but also kind of the role of our MPs in Wales to stand up for the kind of the interests of Welsh population. So I think there is a need to bring things together. There's definitely need when it comes to housing decarbonisation and the poverty strategy, probably to speak a lot more to each other than it has done in the past. But again, those are things that kind of people are trying to work together on.
Because like you said right at the beginning, you don't want to sort of improve a certain type of house for a certain type of person and leave others behind, isn't it? So that all that's got to sort of speak to each other.
Yeah.
But it is complicated, but of course it's very important, isn't it? And then therefore, given all of that complexity, when you start looking to the future, how do you feel about, are you a glass half full, glass half empty? Are you optimistic about the future? What's your gut telling you about this challenge?
I am naturally glass full, but there are, as you said, kind of there are really great opportunities. Kind of the jobs that come from kind of heat installation, they are foundational jobs. They are well-paid jobs. There's more upkeep to a heat pump system than there is a boiler. So it's not as if kind of you install it and then you step away. There's kind of work to then go back to and kind of work on those. So it's a really good sector to have grow in Wales. And if we do get ahead of the curve and kind of put our emphasis in Wales, then it's a sector that we could kind of go over to England as well and kind of have Wales really kind of drive the way.
Yeah, so there's you can see a really clear sort of opportunistic economic outlook for the changes, and you feel like there is the will in government for those conversations you have in government, both at a Welsh and a UK level, to make some of these changes that you're advocating for.
Yes, I think there is. I think people know what needs to be done. I think it's then the kind of prioritisation of people in government. They've got so many kind of things that they need to be considering, but really understanding how home decarbonisation, fuel poverty, all these things link together. I think Public Health Wales did a report a few years ago looking at the impact of poor quality housing, which has around a £95 million impact per year on the NHS. So really kind of how do we improve housing, but improve them in a way that they are heat pump ready all at once and doing it together rather than having these kind of individual strategies.
Do you think housing sometimes is sort of the forgotten element of decarbonisation in terms of the broader conversation? Because often if you're in the pub and you're talking about climate change with someone, they tend to think about big factories in China, the cars you drive, and those sorts of issues. I think, maybe it's a sweeping generalisation and maybe I'm wrong, but my sense is that sometimes housing isn't necessarily part of that broader conversation sometimes. Do you feel the same, or am I wrong?
Yeah, no, I think it's one of the trickier ones because it is individual decision making. Or that's where it has been very much at the moment. It's down to each individual household, or when you're speaking kind of a larger scale with social landlords. But it gets really complicated then when you're thinking about flats and urban areas where the density of the housing kind of, there's no simple answer. So I think that communication to kind of the broader public, kind of swapping to EVs for your car is a simpler message, whilst it's a little bit more complicated with housing. So needing to really kind of tailor that communication is really important. But yeah, I can see makes it quite a tricky topic.
And do you think the people in the positions of decision-making positions understand are giving housing the credit it deserves in terms of a solution to reducing carbon? Because all of this just sort of ties into, because if they do, great, you can feel positive about the future. If they don't, that's a challenge that needs to be overcome, isn't it?
Yeah, I think in Wales in particular, I do think they do. Kind of the strategies that we've got in Wales, I think kind of before UK government went ahead and said, yes, kind of heat pump is the way to go. This is how we need to address it. And that's a really big signifier to the industry, because before then, and with other governments, there's been discussions about different types of technology. So just being able to make that decision shows how much priority they're putting on the sector, so that we can give confidence to the broader sector around installation providers, manufacturers, everything that we need to come around and kind of support and home decarbonisation, like the government providing that signal was really important. And Wales went.
So that clarity is helpful, right? Because people can decide, all right, well, I can invest in, I can buy my stocks in heat pumps now because I know that's where they're going, right?
Yeah.
And just sort of, I suppose, then to come back as we start to wrap up, to come back to one of your earlier points to sort of finish the scale of the challenge. We've touched upon it a few times in this conversation. You know, we need to be hitting about 60,000 changes a year in order to get that half a million target. You're optimistic about the other things that are happening. How optimistic are you that we can hit that target? Because I know that housing and targets for all governments across the UK haven't necessarily been the best of bedfellows over the years, have they?
I think it will take a big effort. I think we do need to be experimenting with kind of options to provide community switchovers and transitions rather than just focusing on the individuals. And that means we really have to be starting to think now about what do those look like and starting to experiment and kind of think we should pilot different ones so that we can get to the one that really works and we can scale it up quickly. But that needs to start now.
Yeah. Great, Sarah. Well, your sort of closing thought as people would be watching this and about to go off and listen to other talks as they're having their morning coffee, starting to think about, you know, the day ahead and the conversations we're going to be having. What's your sort of overriding message, I suppose, for people when it comes to thinking about housing and decarbonisation and where we are in Wales?
I think overall it's very positive. Kind of we know what we need to do. I think we just now need to focus on being really programmatic and really kind of thinking about how do we do it at pace. So getting that balance right and the speed right.
Yeah. Well, Sara, diolch yn fawr iawn I ti am dymser. Fi'n mynd I check our insulation and loft fi nawr. Sarah, it's been a joy chatting. Thank you very much for being with us. Loads to think about. And I am off to check the insulation of my new loft because I think I might need some work done. But thank you very much for your time. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch.